Hello everyone and welcome back to the Grindexp Beginner Hearthstone Class Card Series. Now, last week I was out on vacation, went out to Pennsylvania. Good food out there, nice to get away, not see 20,000 McDonald's or anything else around where I live. But now that I'm back, took the week to get back into the swing of things, catch up on what I missed, and now we're going to get back into the series and into the next class, which is the Shaman. Now, the Shaman class tends to be built around the overload mechanic, which was covered in the mechanics video a couple of weeks ago. But basically, overload is a pay a little now, pay a little later mechanic. So a card could supposed to cost around 5 or 6, but you may pay 3 mana now, and next turn there's maybe an overload of 2 or 3, which means you don't have your full mana at your disposal in the next turn, but then turn after that it comes back. If you want a further description, again, go into the mechanics overview video that I have, and you can go there and just get a little bit more in-depth with some of the examples there. So with that, let's go on to the minions. Now, there are actually 8 minions for the Shaman, a little bit more than the standards that we've gone over in the past. So the first one is the Dust Devil. It's a 3/1 for a 1 cost, and it also has a Wind Fury, which is very good, very strong for a 1 cost, and that 3 attack, but it has overload of 2. So basically, if you play this card, your turn 2 is basically nulled as far as playing anything, but you will be able to attack for 6 damage. Just hopefully your opponent wasn't able also to play a minion that turn, otherwise things get a little bit dicey, but at least you may be able to attack them directly and attack the minion and do 2 things for 1 card. The next one is Windspeaker, along the same lines. It's a 3/3/4 cost. It has a battle cry, give a friendly minion Wind Fury, which is very good. Tends to be played more in the mid-range decks, so give a totem with Rockbiter, or give another minion that may get Rockbiter, or not even Rockbiter weapon itself. Just to be able to attack and do a lot of damage to the hero, or just help clear out minions on the opponent's side of the field. Now, the third one is Alakir, the Windlord. It seems very off balance for a 3 attack, 5 health, but 8 cost. But you have to look at the sheer amount of text that he has. It's a Wind Fury, so he can attack twice. Has charge, so it doesn't have to wait a turn. Has Divine Shield, so it soaks up the first hit, anything that hits it. Plus it has taunt. So that's just a lot of stuff that they put on there, and it makes up for the 8 cost. And when you throw in any other kind of buffs, any other kind of HP modifiers, or even Bloodlust, which we'll get to later, can be very effective at dealing a lot of damage very quickly and do a lot of stuff in the late game. Fourth one is the Flame Tongue Totem. Now, it's a 0/3 for 2, but it gives adjacent minions to attack, which makes up for it, especially consider you have 2 minions, that's 4 attack, that's double its own mana cost, and then you throw in Bloodlust if you're going for that token Bloodlust finish off kind of deck theme. It is well worth it. Probably want to run in any Shaman deck, at least 1 if not 2, regardless, just to help out, even just totems. The 5th one on the list is the Monotide Totem. It's a 0/3, again, kind of looking at the Flame Tongue Totem, same kind of vibe, but it costs 3. But at the end of the turn, you draw a card, which for cycling effects and just holding hand advantage, and is trying to fish for whatever you may want to get in order to play it, can help out a lot more. I don't see too many Shamans play it. It's one of those things that either it's built into a deck or it's not. But drawing a card is very strong in this game, besides a few specific mechanics such as Taunt or Divine Shield that have been seen a lot in the Mana Grind. Shout out to Mana Grind and their standard and limited format tournaments as far as what mechanics are really strong. So drawing a card is probably the top, followed by such things as like Taunt or Divine Shield or Charge. So moving on to the bottom row now, the Fire Elemental. it's very good for its own stats for the body itself. For a 6/5 for 6 cost, it's very good. But when we throw in the Battlecry deal 3 damage, it can basically get rid of any low to almost mid-range minion on your opponent's side of the field just by itself. So it clears out a minion, but all by itself, just the effect, and then you get attacked with it next turn, and it's a pretty decent body, can pretty much do whatever you want. So very strong card, all of itself, and I wish it was a neutral card so I could put it in all the others, but they kept it for Shaman. I don't understand why, but it's a very cool, very effective card all by itself. Now the second to last one is the Unbound Elemental, and this kind of works around the Overload mechanic itself, but in a different way. It's a 2/4 for 3 cost, but whenever you play a card that has Overload, you actually, that card, that minion, gains +1/+1. So it was meant to be kind of like a mono worm for a mage. Every time you play a spell, give it +1 attack. It's along those kind of same lines. Don't see too many shamans really play it at all, because it's how many Overload cards can you play at once, especially if you play Unbound on turn 3 or turn 4, play one card, but then you kind of set yourself up to be starved of monocrystals. So it's kind of a situational card, and which makes it a situational deck type. But again, it's not by any means unplayable. You just have to figure out how it works in the deck you're trying to build, and then go from there. And then the last minion we have is Earth Elemental, which is a 7 attack for 8 health, which is huge for a 5 mana cost, which is nuts. It does have Taunt, which is very awesome, especially with that much health. It'll suck up at least 2 or 3 minion attacks, unless it's going to run something else big into it, which is always a plus. Even though it has an Overload of 3, you have to remember, even if you play it on turn 5, Overload of 3, next turn you're going to have 6 mana crystals available and 3 are gone. So you're still with 3 mana crystals, which is enough to do a little bit of defensive or add a little bit more offensive ability to the Earth Elemental itself, or summon another totem. So you're not going to be totally mono-starved because of this 1 minion, the Earth Elemental itself. So it's a very strong body for itself, great for mid to late game builds and decks. Now, before we move on to the spells, I just want to go over the hero ability itself. Now, this slide shows you the Thrall, your hero, with the Totemic Call, summon a random totem, and here are the 4 totems themselves. You have the Wrath of Air, which gives you spell power +1. You have Searing Totem, which is the only totem that has an attack of 1, but also consequently only has 1 health compared to the other 3. You have Stoneclaw, which has, again, 0 health, 0 attack, but has 2 health, but has the added benefit of Taunt, which, believe you or me, a random taunter like that has saved many people on Cockatrice duels, and will save many more when beta and then release happens. And then lastly, you have the Healing Totem, which heals 1 health to all friendly characters at the end of the turn, which is very good at the beginning of the game, especially if it lasts 3, 4, 5, 6 turns. Can help out a lot with your minions and your health. So I just wanted to show you the totems real quick and just let you suck them in and actually understand what they are and what they do. Alright, now we're going to move on to the spells. Now, this first grouping of spells deals primarily with direct damage or AoE type damage. The first one, Earthshock, silences a minion and then deals 1 damage to it. Doesn't seem like that much, but when you consider cards such as Ascended Shieldmaster, being able to silence its taunt and deal 1 damage to bring it within range of your other low-cost minions, or in another example with Loot Hoarder, which is a death rattle of draw 1 card for your opponent, being able to silence it and then kill it because it only has 1 health is very effective cost-wise and does not let your opponent draw a card. Now, along the same lines, Frost Shock deals 1 damage and then freezes an enemy minion, basically letting you help stall from 1 attack this turn or the next turn, and being able to work around whatever minions they have on their side of the field. The third one, Lightning Bolt, deals 3 damage with an overload of 1. So again, this is another overload card that tends to be equal cost-wise, if not more so. But as you've been seeing, the trend will be quite the opposite. deals 3 damage for 1 cost. Not too bad. More of a clutch situation. But hey, if you want to use it, you can use it and just work your way around the overload. Now, quite the opposite is Lava Burst, which is a 3 cost, deals 5 damage, overload of 2. But even though it's a equal 5 damage for overload of 2 plus the 3, which makes it a 5 cost, since it's spread out over the 2 turns, it really is a lot stronger than it tends out to be. You tend to run 1, if not 2, if you can fit it in. You just always have to be careful about the overload. Now, the last one on the top set of spells here is Bloodlust. Now, Bloodlust is kind of, along with Rock Body Weapon down there, are kind of like the sleeper cards. If you're playing against a Shaman, you always have to kind of think, okay, they have either a Rock Body Weapon or a Bloodlust in their hands, and they're just trying to fill up their field enough that they can just play these cards and then just basically one-shot you on 1 turn, hit you, kill you, do whatever they need to do, or at least do a board wipe and then get you down enough that the next turn they can just finish you off. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind if you're playing against a Shaman and just work your way around it. On the opposite hand, for a Shaman, you love these cards, you want to be able to play these cards as fast as you can with a big enough board and just do enough damage to put your opponent in a severe defensive mode. That's so you don't have to worry about really too many things happening to your side of the field. Now, that was Bloodlust. Rock Body Weapon kind of was in that same grouping. Give a friendly minion 3 attack this turn. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not minion, it's friendly character, so it can apply to your hero as well. And in combination with the 2 Shaman weapons, it will actually add the attack to those weapons, making your hero stronger for that particular turn as well. Now, Forked Lightning deal 2 damage to 2 random enemy minions, overload of 2. Again, overload cost is heavy. It's kind of like a Warrior's Cleave, but it's slightly cheaper. You spread it over the turns, but overall, play around it. Make sure you don't use the overload mechanic, because it will use you back. And lastly, we have Lightning Storm, which deals 2 to 3 damage to all enemy minions, overload of 2, cost 3. So again, it doesn't seem mana efficient, but again, it's spread out over 2 turns, allowing you to play it earlier. So it's kind of like a Mage's Blizzard, deals 2 damage. You don't get the Frost, but that Blizzard costs 5, where this only costs 3, next turn costs 2. But even if you do play it on turn 3, on turn 4, you will still have 2 mana crystals to do something with, whether you summon a totem or play a lower cost card. So those are the AoE / single direct target damage spells. Now we're going to move on to the next set. Now the second grouping of spells here is kind of like a big clusterfuck. Sorry if I had to say it that way, but it's generally there's a bunch of one-offs and 2 weapons and a couple of other things. So just kind of throw them all together, and we'll go through them one by one as we've been doing all along. Now, the first 2 I'm going to go over, and we keep the weapons grouped, is the Stormforge X. It's a 2 attack, 3 durability, so it'll last a while, overload of 1, and cost 2. So it's actually not that bad when you consider that the overload and the amount of cost combined for 2 attack over 3 turns, so it's really 6 damage, so you're getting twice as much damage for the total cost of it over its lifespan. Also great for picking off lower cost early game minions on your opponent's side of the field, and helps keep your totems, if you're playing, especially playing a token deck, helps keep them alive longer, allows you to buff them or do whatever you need to do with them, and lets you get closer to that whole Bloodlust thing that we were talking about before. Now, Doomhammer, the Thrall, Doomhammer, come here! It's a 5 cost, overload of 2, so 7 costs over the cost of 2 turns, but it has Wind Fury, which is awesome. And then you look at the 2 attack and the 8 durability, so that's 16 damage, but you can do that over the course of 4 turns. So 16 damage over the course of 4 turns is a lot of damage in a short amount of time for just a weapon, let alone any minions or direct damage spells that you may have. The first actual spell, I know, kind of threw the weapons in there, but the first actual spell we'll go over now is Wind Fury. Cost 2, give a minion Wind Fury. Straight up, simple. If you want to run like a token deck, or if you want to run a crazy Wind Fury deck with neutral minions, that there are a few that deal with Wind Fury as well. It can be very good, especially just kind of making your opponent kill your minions and focusing minions of that on your health and allow you to do other things, either with weapons or other minions themselves. Ascended Spirit. Choose a minion. When that minion is destroyed, return it to the battlefield. Now when you return it to the battlefield, you return it as is, no alterations. If it has was a, say, a Sunwalker, it'll come back with the Divine Shield and the taunt on it, as is when it was destroyed in its base format. Next we have Ancestral Healing. Restore a minion to full health and give it taunt. Now, I'm putting this card in here. I haven't seen any Shaman use it, so I'm wondering if it was just in the Hearthstone database. But it seems like, why not play it? But then again, 30 cards is actually quite constrictive and forces you to think outside the box as far as cards are concerned. And it just seems like if it is a true real card, that it just never quite makes it in, or a purpose for it is never quite found. But again, I have to kind of verify this one as far as being a real card. I've never seen a Shaman actually play it, so it may have been an older card that just doesn't exist right now. But hey, if it's a real card by itself, a zero cost card for it to do that, yeah, gimme. Alright, we'll go on to Feral Spirit next. Now, it's a spell card, but it lets you summon 2/3 Spirables that have taunt on them, and it also has an overload of 2. So overload 2 you almost forget about it, because you see the 2 Spirables there. They're 2 attack, 3 health, and you get 2 of them. They both have taunt. These Feral Spirits are like the lifeblood of any Shaman deck. You always want to have them. They're great taunters. They're usually just outside the range of AoE spells, which usually do 1 to 2 damage. The higher AoEs are there, but they tend to be with the priests and the shamans themselves. So you're pretty safe from AoEs, and they can help you stall out and actually do some damage. And considering totems and other tokens with Bloodlust can deal a lot of damage. Now, Foresight over there, draw a card. That card costs 3 less. Is kind of like a gambling card for the shamans. It's awesome if you draw with like an Earth Elemental or a Fire Elemental, because now you get a card out so much more earlier, and you can deal so much more damage or have so much more utility in the case of the Fire Elemental, that it's kind of ridiculous. But again, it's a draw card and it costs 3, so you want to get at least something that costs 3 to break even, if not higher. So you always want to keep that in mind. But again, the gambling effect, if you're into that kind of random deck building, random effect decks, you definitely want to put that in there just to have a little bit of fun with it. Now, the next one over there, Totemic Might. Give your totems +2 health. Helps them just live longer, and can help you set up a totem bloodlust type deal. Just let them live a little bit longer, just so you can get more of them out there. Maybe get 1 or 2 minions, or those Feral Spirits, again, Feral Spirits, out on there with the totems that have more health, and then just throw a Bloodlust or Rockbiter and just have fun, especially when you get a Doom Hammer on there. You just can do like 15 to 20 damage out of nowhere. And then lastly, the last spell we have here is Hex. Now, it's similar to a Mage's Polymorph. Transform a minion into a 0/1 frog. The Polymorph is a 1/1, so that minion can at least still attack with a Polymorph. But where the difference is with Hex, it's a 0/1, but it has taunt, so you still have to go after it. You won't take any damage, but it's still kind of an annoyance. But hey, you take a Ragdoll's, reduce it down to that. Take a Nixia, reduce it down to that. Any kind of high cost or any kind of annoying minion like Ascension, and just reduce it down to a 0/1, pick it off, and just don't have to deal with it anymore. You always tend to see Shamans running 1, sometimes 2, if they can afford it in their deck. Now, there we go. So that was spells, the minions, and everything else in between with a few weapons. Now, as always, at the end, deck concepts. Yes, old money deck concepts. Now, I outsourced this, and I tried to figure out what kind of deck concepts there are out there, and Shout out to Spaj. He's in the Mono Grind community, and he's a pretty good Shaman player. Been playing Shaman pretty much all the time, so he helped me figure out these two relatively different styles of Shaman decks. Now, the first one is the mid-range type deck concept. Go to mid-range around anywhere between 4 or 5 cost cards, and more of the beatdown style versus the token style. Now, you have Sunmarker on there, a neutral card, but it's a great neutral card. It's a 6 cost, so it's a little high, but it has a decent deck of 4, has good health of 5, it has Taunt, and it has Divine Shield. Great effects for the cost and everything else. And then you have Wind Speaker, as went over, along with the Flame Tongue and the Fire Elemental. Again, good amount of damage, good effects, and helps out your totems as well as other low-cost minions as well. And then, of course, always with a Shaman, you always account for your hero effect as well. And then down there, not so much the spells, but so much just other helper cards. You have, you could use the Stormforge Axe for picking off low-cost minions, or you can go all out with the Doom Hammer in the mid to late game and just steal your damage that way, put a game timer on, force your opponent to go more aggressive, maybe overextend their board and catch them that way. And then, of course, the Rockbiter weapon, always giving more attack to whatever minion or hero itself is always a great thing. And then Feral Spirits, always have Feral Spirits. I cannot underestimate the importance of how great they are and just how you always just want to have them. 2 toners for the 1 spell is an amazing thing. Now, the second deck concept here is more on the low bolt end. It's a token deck, almost borderline mini aggro, so to speak, with the Raid Leader and the Imp Master there as well. But overall, it has the same kind of flavor with the Wind Speaker and the Flame Tongue, the Feral Spirit, and the Rockbiter, as well as your hero power. Never forget your hero power. But when you throw in such things as the Raid Leader, makes all your friendly minions plus 1 attack, so now all your totems are now attackers. The Imp Master giving you 1/1 imps. They become 2/1 imps now, so now they can start doing some stuff. Basically, cannon fodder for higher attack and health minions on your opponent's side of the field, with relatively no loss, so to speak, on your side of the field. And then for the all-out max flavor of the Knife Juggler in the beginning there, for dealing 1 damage randomly every time you summon a monster. And then lastly, with any kind of like this style of deck with the Raid Leader, especially token generators, and your totems, especially with the Raid Leader, a Bloodlust is amazing. Can't understand, can't underestimate how I've seen Shamans summon Raid Leader, have 2 totems, they summon another totem, get a big body on there, and then they do a Rockbiter on their own hero, and then they do a Bloodlust. It's like 15-20 damage, sometimes even more out there, depending if they get a Wind Speaker out there to give Wind Fury. It's a very out of the blue damage, and it kind of puts itself on par with the amount of damage a mage deck can do now with the mage Power Blast and Fireball changes, as well as the damage output of a rogue deck and their cards can do. This style of Shaman deck can kind of get up there very quickly if you're able to pull it off. So those are the 2 different styles there. You have your token Shaman deck and you have your mid-range deck, and that does it for the Shaman class card overview. So I'll just leave you with that, and the next one will probably be the Rogue class card overview. Probably going to be a little different style as far as me just going over it. Hopefully going to have a special guest on with me. It'll be a slightly longer podcast just by nature of having another person on, but it'll be more of a general overview. I'll still show the cards, they can still read them and go over themselves, but it'll be more of a true-blooded class overview, the strengths of the class versus the weaknesses, but it'll still show you all the class cards, and as always give you a few deck concepts at the end. And if everything works out, we'll do a few more of those, as well as mixing in the styles that I've done before. And hopefully we'll get all these out before beta. That's why I can focus on just doing live stream of Cockroach Duels before beta comes out, or just live streaming the beta itself, and I can start answering your questions directly and right on the spot instead of having to go through YouTube comments. So, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what other classes you would like to see before others, and I'll see if I can try to work it in, change things up. But, as always, thank you. Hope you enjoyed. Looking forward to more, and have a good night.